From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, March the 9th, 2022. Well, as the refugee crisis continues to grow more dire every day from Ukraine, Israel announced new measures to absorb fleeing Ukrainians into the country. Interior Minister Ayelet Shaked told a press conference last night the sights of war in Ukraine and the suffering experienced by its citizens rattle the soul and don't allow us to remain indifferent. She said Israel will allow 25,000 Ukrainians who are not Jewish and not eligible for immigration to stay in the country as refugees. This includes approximately 20,000 Ukrainians who were present in Israel before the outbreak of fighting, most of them without any legal status, plus granting entry and stay for an additional 5,000 Ukrainians who have fled the fighting, initially with a temporary visa for 3 months or until the danger subsides. Shaked said that in addition, the country is expected to absorb in the coming weeks and months around 100,000 Ukrainians who are fleeing the fighting within the framework of the law of return. She tweeted, Ukrainians fleeing the war, both those who have a Jewish background and their family, will be able to come to Israel and receive full citizenship. Therefore, the Foreign Ministry wrote, Israel is expected to be one of the world's leading countries of destination and refuge for Ukrainian citizens fleeing the war, both in absolute numbers and certainly based on the country's size. Israel's President Isaac Herzog arrived in Turkey today for an official state visit, the first by an Israeli leader to Turkey since 2008. Herzog tweeted this morning before departing, bridges and ties with Turkey are an Israeli and regional interest. I hope this visit leads to a deeper dialogue between Israel and Turkey. Relations between the two countries have been strained for some 12 years, notably since the Mavi Marmara incident in May of 2010. Herzog was greeted in Ankara today by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the presidential complex, complete with an honor guard and a band, which played the Israeli anthem Hatikva for the first time since 2008. After a sit-down behind closed doors, the two addressed the press, Erdogan saying, I believe that this historic visit will be a turning point in relations between Turkey and Israel. Strengthening relations with the state of Israel, he said, has great value for our country. Erdogan also condemned anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of racism. Herzog, speaking of past tensions with Turkey, said that the visit is an important moment in the relations between the countries and a great privilege for both of us to lay the foundations of this new development in friendship between our peoples. We will strive, he said, to resolve disputes with respect and openness. Partnership in the Middle East is important to all of us, Herzog said. All of us, Muslim, Jews, and Christians, can and should live in peace in this beautiful space. The United States Agency for International Development announced 2 grants to support peace building. Speaking at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem yesterday, Deputy Administrator Isabel Coleman announced the first 2 awards under the Middle East Partnership for Peace Act to build partnerships, increase economic growth, and lay the foundation for peace through people-to-people programs, namely between Israelis and Palestinians in the private sector. The recipients of the grants were not mentioned. Coleman told reporters, we're not actually disclosing the names right now, explaining that there are many businesses that are reluctant to engage in this, so we are allowing the trade association some space and some time for them to get comfortable with that, which is again part of the process. The Times of Israel reports this reluctance likely refers to some in the Palestinian sector who are hesitant to publicly coordinate and work with Israel. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Wednesday, March the 9th at 7 o'clock. It's Talmud Study. At 7:30, a briefing on the crisis in Ukraine, how it affects Israel, the Jewish community of Kharkiv, and more from the Times of Israel diplomatic reporter Lazar Berman, who speaks from Lviv, with FIDF CEO Steve Weil. At 8, Robert Siegel surveys a global democracy in crisis with Timothy Snyder, Fionna Hill, and Aaron David Miller. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with author Fran Klagsbrun on L'chaim, who talks about her biography on Golda Meir. At 10, Rabbi Ammiel Hirsch speaks on representation and cultural appropriation. At 10:30, it's a look at rabbis and feminism. And coming up next, it's Thinking Out Loud. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, March the 9th, 2022. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy, stay well.